Is buying a used Mac Pro in 2023 a good idea, and what are the things you should consider? Guys, do you remember that in 2018 I got a used Mac Pro 4,1/5,1 and upgraded it on my channel very extensively? So I'm using this actually for 5 years, and the question is, can I replace it, for example, with a Mac Pro trash can, the Mac Pro 6,1? And what would that entail, and how does it actually compare in terms of upgradability and a bunch of other things with the systems that I already have versus maybe systems that I would get. So quick rating, as you can see here, Mac Pro, the old ones, the tower ones, excellent upgradability. You could change freaking everything on these things. The Mac Pro cheese grater, you know, remember this system tray where you have the CPU and the memory, you can just slide this out. Very convenient to work on. Switching the memory modules, very easy. Getting to the CPU, yes, you needed one special tool, but it was very, very accessible, easy and quick to do. Not to mention all these other parts, you know, you have these 4 drive bays for the solid state drives, for hard drives. You could switch out the graphics card. Everything was so easy. And then Apple migrated to the quote-unquote partly upgradable Mac Pro trash can, where yes, you also have that latch that you can open, and then you can access the memory very easily, and you could even upgrade the NVMe, although Apple tried to prevent that by using a proprietary connector standard, but which you can very easily circumvent with an adapter. So that's why I think the Mac Pros, the older ones, are very nice, because you can still upgrade at least partly. Now, then it comes to the iMacPro, totally glued up, removing that glass, damaging that glue. You have to be really super careful. It's a pain to work on. Yes, you could change theoretically the CPU. Yes, you could theoretically change the RAM, but it's quite a hassle. And since it's a more modern machine, I would argue it might not make as much sense. Now, remembering back the Mac Pro cheese grater, you could actually get that at single or dual CPU variants. When they were first introduced, they were using still the 45 nanometer process, which was not as good. But later on, they introduced 32 nanometers, which in fact, that's exactly what I upgraded. And you had a ton of CPU configurations. Now, I did actually went back, looked at the old Apple website. What were these upgrades costing? And for example, if I were to put in a 6-core CPU, which I did in my system for maybe $100, and if I wanted to put in 32 gigabytes of memory, which I back then put 48, for also about $100, then that Mac would cost me $600. It did cost me maybe $600 for the similar upgrades, but when you buy this new, it was almost $4K. And nowadays, the costs have come down even more. I've seen these Mac Pro for $300. Sometimes they give them away. I mean, if you just want to have a fun project, you could even install Windows on them and use it as a gaming machine, although it's not super energy efficient. It works for quite a few games, and it works surprisingly good. I mean, these Xeon processors, I'm pretty happy with them. Get them now for $60, the 48 gigabytes of memory. I saw them for 50. And yeah, that would be what I roughly estimate as a 86% price drop. That is not too bad. However, I must say, doing that in 2018, I think was a much better deal. I mean, I used that system for 5 years now to edit YouTube videos on, and it just works. I mean, maybe if you have exotic codecs, it wouldn't, but I just have a normal codec out of my Canon camera, and that works great. So let's look at the Mac Pro 6,1. That thing was on the market like forever. I think they built these in Texas or wherever, and I think the community, the professionals, didn't embrace them as much as Apple had expected. And my theory is just to stretch out the cost of their investment over a longer time and recoup more money out of it. They just extended the lifespan beyond what would normally be the case. We have reached the 22 nanometer process. That's pretty good. But if you install a 12-core CPU, the prices quickly spiraled out of control. Guys, I have the 6-core model here with 32 gigs of RAM, but you know, putting in the 12-core CPU, depending on which base model you had, was like $3,000 to $3,500, and memory was expensive. So if you spec everything out, easily you're moving quickly towards the 10K system, which yeah, I mean, if you're professional and that's probably normal, but if you just maybe want to use it as a side hustle for your YouTube, that was maybe out of the question for most people. However, since the prices have dropped, I got this for $500, and what I could do now is put in a 2 terabyte NVMe for about 120 bucks. That's pretty awesome. If you remember when you have other Macs like the Mac Studio or something like that, what the upgrade prices are there, that is really super affordable to upgrade the NVMe. Even the 12-core processor, remembering that I just showed you, that was like a $3,000 upgrade. You can get these 12 cores used. I've seen them from a reputable guy who sells this old server equipment, 80 bucks, memory the same. So basically you have a 9K system for about maybe 700, 800 bucks, depending on what you choose. And quickly jumping to the iMacPro, which is maybe my least favorite in terms of upgradability, but I still like it because it has this really nice form factor. Guys, many years ago, I used the iMac and I really loved this design and this concept. Although the thermals in the old iMacs weren't perfect, Apple claimed here it had much better thermals. But from what I see, at least the base model, I mean, obviously I would not upgrade this because it's all glued. I saw 60% price reduction. So it's not as good, but it's not terrible. And I think one big thing why these are also keeping the value as good is that, from what it seems like, also support the Sonoma. And that's where I want to really point out, the cheese grater was great in 2008 because it came then with the new Mojave. And when you get a Mac with the operating system, I think approximately for 3 years you will receive updates, after which you maybe can stretch it for another year, but then at some point you start running into problem territory. So important, keep the limitations in mind. It may look at first attractive, why you have such discounts compared to the original price. However, the discounts are there for a reason. So with the MacPro 4.1 and 5.1, I would not recommend this system unless you can get it for free or someone you know wants just to get rid of it. I wouldn't purchase these anymore because it's just too old. It has only PCI 2.0, which isn't that dramatic. I mean, PCI 2.0 still, I mean, it works. You can smash an NVMe in there and get reasonable read and write speeds, no problem, but you don't get updates anymore. And in Europe, because we have like energy shortages, the high power consumption, energy prices go up. I mean, 40 cents per kilowatt hour. In the future, maybe I've seen some cities like Munich, there were prices like 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Just look at your electricity bill and then tell me, I mean, you're paying like a few $100 to just operate this system every year, then that's not very attractive from a power consumption standpoint. And it goes to show why people drifting gradually towards the Apple Silicon. The limitations of the iMacPro would be that it's more expensive, you're not saving as much. It's very hard to upgrade, if not impossible to upgrade, I mean, because it's glued. Power consumption, I think, got a little bit better since the CPU went to a more efficient nanometer process, but I also know from experience that this has the Vega cards, and the Vega cards are getting notoriously relatively warm if you put load on them. So in conclusion, I would really say, think about it. Don't just be blinded by the affordable prices. The cheese grater, in my opinion, is too old. The 6.1 could be still viable, but you won't get as long as a use period out of it. And the iMacPro would be very nice if you have the budget for it, because the system is really relatively powerful and a nice overall package. Guys, let's just get rolling with the 6.1. I've have a bunch of more 6.1 videos that I want to share with you, such as upgrading, what to upgrade and how the performance is. Let's jump to the next video.